Hey, this is Perch, and let's talk target audience. So here's a message, gives us a chance to talk target audience, which is an exciting thing for me anyway. Howdy, Perch. In college of 2009, I took media studies, which focused heavily on marketing. Hey, look at you! It actually, taking marketing. You're already ahead of the class. Anyway, a term we'd hear often was target audience, and it was explained to us as this isn't the only group you want buying your product, but it is the main group we market to. Correct. Not that I have to explain to you. No, it's good. That nuance seems to be lost now. I've had discussion online writers and I've sorry, let me start over. This mail is written perfectly. I'm reading it like a dumbass. I've had discussions in online writers groups and been shocked by how many people deny the very concept of a target audience, some believing them to be racist, sexist, usually sexist, or just not real, which blows my mind. I've noticed in comics there seems to be no acknowledgement of this either. Is the concept still valid in 2022 as far as these companies are concerned, and do you feel their marketing for comics could lean more into it? Are people afraid of branding a book as for boys? I notice this with age too. Every seems to be for some ambiguous age group that's like 14 to 50 rather than books for different ages, aside from overtly kids comics like Scooby-Doo. Great question. Absolutely great question. And so first off, target audience is absolutely, no doubt about it, still a thing. Still important, still very relevant, still something you want to study. If you want to be successful in a company, you're going to need to understand target audience. You're going to need to help market it. And the comment you made was perfect. It's not the only group you want buying your product, but it's how you market. Companies do not have unlimited marketing budget, and even if they did have unlimited marketing dollars, you can kind of get two groups at odds with each other based on how you market it. For example, if you took a comic book, if you took the Milestone comic book, let's say the new Static book, and as DC, you're like, okay, we've got this book and features a young black superhero. We want to tie into contemporary things. We want to reference Black Lives Matter and some of these current rip from the headline type things. That's inside the comic. However, when we market it, we're going to market it as a fun superhero book for kids. We're going to do that because they don't market it that way, but that they want to basically cast a wide net to get a bunch of people to pick it up. If they started marketing it as, hey, if you're a big Black Lives Matter supporter and you believe cops are racist and they kill children and this comic book is for you, you're going to get some people who are like, all right, that's me, I'm in for that, I'll buy it. But you're going to get a whole other audience who's like, there's no way I'm touching that book now. So generally speaking, when you're trying to identify your target market, you want to do so, to really hone your message, hone your dollars, but not at the risk of isolating another group. A target market shouldn't be, one that excludes someone else, and that's very important when you're doing marketing. If you're going to say, hey, we want to market this car, we are BMW and we have expensive, overpriced imported cars. And, we want to market this at people who are, affluent, probably, in their 30s, people who are, they've gotten that promotion at their job. They are probably willing to extend themselves a little further than they should. They probably have a house already under their belt and they want to look for other ways to, show off their status. And this, BMW is the way that they can do that. So that's who we're going to market this to. And we're also going to kind of subtly push our marketing at, upper middle class families who, if they really had the money to afford a car, they'd go for a Tesla or they'd go for a Porsche or they'd go for a Jaguar or something like that. But we're going to go for a BMW. All these things are probably offending lots of BMW. I drove a BMW for quite a while. I enjoyed it. I was one of those douchebags. It was fine. Car performed nicely until one day it just stopped performing nicely. And that seems to be the issue with BMW is it's a great car until it's not. And when it's not, it sucks. And that seems to be the consistent story I've seen. But whatever. You want to basically spend your marketing dollars at a group you think is going to buy your book. In the case of comic books, but you don't want to isolate people in the process. The trick is that the denial of existence of a target audience. Well, here's the dirty truth, and it really is the huge contradiction in comics. Comic books, the publishers would like to appeal to a, in many cases, younger, more diverse audience, not traditional comic buyers, people who are, it's what the comic book industry seems to be doing is wanting to market itself as 20 somethings or people who mentally are still stuck in their 20s, who are, remember fondly the 90s, but didn't actually really live through it. So they've got nostalgia for this time period they didn't actually exist in. So they've got movies, nostalgia based movies that are kind of how they inform themselves as to what the era was actually like, which I find thoroughly bizarre, but that's fine. There was this guy had to be early 20s. Like, my favorite band is Alice in Chains. Why? Because they're trans supporters, man. I'm like, what? I mean, they may be. I have no idea what the band is up to now. I think the lead singer of Alice in Chains died, right? I mean, there's a new. I don't know. Maybe I've got that wrong. But somebody in the comments was like, yes, he died. And I'm sure the band was probably always in support of trans people. I wouldn't be surprised, but that wasn't what they were known for. Like that's a weird thing to say the band was known for that. Anyway, put that aside. Uh, Comic books, however, are expensive. They're $3.99, $4.99. That's not disposable income. Unfortunately, the audience that the comic industry is chasing, that they say they really would like to acquire, is not an audience that is going to spend the money that comic books currently cost on comic books. Now, you might say, well, wait a minute, that group is perfectly willing to go, pay for overpriced coffee at Starbucks, and you are correct, they are. But coffee is not comics. And as it turns out, people value coffee a lot more than comics, so especially of that age group. The social interaction of being able to go to, pick up coffee at, maybe a Starbucks, but, if you're lucky, you've got a nice, local kind of coffee brewer that has drip, and you can nerd out about beans and all the rest of that kind of stuff. It's funny because there are people who are legitimately good coffee-minded people, like Sean Murphy's wife, Katana, that legitimately understands, I think, good coffee. And when she talks to it, she talks intelligently. And then there's that other group who understands just enough to be kind of, they've read some of the words on their local kind of comic or coffee place, and they believe they're coffee snobs, but they're like, I like the Sumatra with fair trade beans. It's like, okay, you just said a lot of words there. Do you know what any of those mean? But regardless, um, that audience is not going to be picking up a $3.99, $4.99 comic. That is a target audience you are marketing to who cannot afford your product or doesn't desire to afford your product. Part of identifying a target audience is the target market has to be somebody who is actually willing to buy your product. So, for example, if once again using the BMW example, if BMW was coming out saying, we desire, first-time drivers, kids that are still in high school who got their license, we want BMW to be their first car. So we're going to market our BMW car at 16-year-olds. That's what we're going to do. That's our target audience. You'd say, well, that's stupid because that audience doesn't have the money to afford those cars. Their parents are not going to be buying them BMWs unless they're truly, truly pampered people. That doesn't make any sense. That's inherently the problem with comics. And frankly, a lot of books, they desire this target audience that makes them feel like good people or like they're doing something reasonable with their lives. But the reality is that isn't an audience that's going to buy their books. They can't afford it. They're not going to buy it. And it's no knock against the quality of the book. It's just inherent to the very nature of the comics themselves. They're too expensive. It does not work. So, I think that there's a lot of ways you can skin this cat. But at the end of the day, if you're going to be selling your comic, you need to identify your target market. You need to do some validation of your market, which is another fancy marketing term, to basically, prove that the market that you believe is your target can actually afford and consume your what you're making if you get it right. And this is again where I think a lot of the people who are doing crowdfunding on all fronts, the Kickstarters, the Indiegogos, etc. One of the reasons why there was that initial success, and I understand that crowdfunding has cooled significantly over the last 2 years, which it has by numbers. It's not a shot against anyone, but it has. Definitely, there's been some big, huge, numbers put on the board for a couple projects, but on the whole, it's softened. But it's softened for the same reason. The people who got into crowdfunding and raised a lot of money, they marketed heavily to their target audience. They understood these are the people who are going to spend money on me, and I'm going to go very directly at that audience. And they did, and it worked. And they were able to connect the target audience who would buy their book with the message of the book that they were putting out, and success happened. Over time, you have to sustain that interest, which gets to be kind of the problem, which is a little bit what's going on with crowdfunding now. Is that some people went in and they got it, and now we've seen some attrition from that, which is fine. That's normal. But you have to be able to connect that target audience with your product. If you don't do that, then you're in trouble. And I think that's in some cases one of the flaws of current large comic publishers and even small ones. Like it seems confusing at times. Like who's Mad Cave's audience? Who's who's Aftershocks audience? Do they really understand their audience, and do they market and push to their audience? And does their audience have the money to actually afford their books in the first place? Maybe they would be well served getting a different audience. You're right. Nobody wants to come out and say this book is for white dudes between the ages of 30 and 50. That's our audience. However, the product that they're selling, one with decades of legacy material that really appeals to collectors and costs $5 an issue, got bad news for you. That is your audience. That is your market. Whether you want to target that market or not, that by and large is your market. Now, not all white. There's certainly, Hispanic, there's Black, there's Asian, there's others that other races that go for that. But that audience does skew heavily male. It does. If you want to change that, good for you. Go for it. However, you're going to need to A, establish a different place to sell these books, and B, you're going to have to either lower the price to something that people will consume to get hooked on things, or you're going to have to figure out a much stronger value proposition to get them to buy it. But, you can't just say, hey, I'm going to shift the market over here. You didn't validate your target audience. Anyway, wonderful mail, great topic, good things to think about. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like and subscribe, of course, and thanks for listening.